Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. Really glad to be here with my guest today, which is filmmaker James Fox. Many of you know who James is, but if you do not, James, I think by everyone's opinion, is the world's leading documentary filmmaker on the subject of UFO or UAP. I would say really the best filmmaker that this field has ever had in such a subject. Every one of his films have been significant contributions to the genre. He started out years ago with Out of the Blue. I Know What I Saw. He did The Phenomenon a couple of years ago, which was excellent. Moment of Contact, just back in 2022, I believe. And now, most recently, The Program, which has just been released. We're going to talk all about that. What I learned, I just did a little bit of background on you, James, and it turns out that your interest in UFOs started around the same time that mine did, around the mid-1990s. I'm thinking one thing about James's films that you will notice if you've watched them: detailed research, really good storytelling. I think that's one of the best things about him. He really knows how to tell a story. Excellent interviews with high-profile figures, including government officials, military personnel who've had firsthand experience with UFOs or UAPs. And you might have caught him on Joe Rogan Experience, where he talked about a lot of his work. That was great, too. So, James, welcome to the program, this program.
Right. Pun intended.
I guess so.
No, thanks for that intro. It's lovely, and people come and participate with my productions, and they look at me and they're like, "You're so dysfunctional. How do you possibly put a documentary together?" I said, "There's something to do with the chaos around me, but I do kind of wing it in a sense." And I think that works both for and against me. But I do have this funny methodology that I do, and I'm kind of documenting my questioning, my journey, my effort to find out what the hell's going on.
Yeah, that comes through. That comes through in all of your work. It's like, how do you do something great? You follow your passion, you follow your questions. And as I see it, it's like anyone who wants to come along for the ride, they're welcome to do so. And I feel that's what you've always done. You're exploring your interests.
I'm just really, really curious, as you are. I was joking right before we went on the show with you. You write encyclopedias. I mean, your books are amazing, but it's like the go-to place for historical record on a very accurate depiction of the last, history of the phenomenon. It's incredibly impressive.
Thanks for that. I want to talk about your stuff today, though. That's why you're here, but thank you. One thing, I was chatting with my wife, Tracy, just a little while ago, and she pointed something out that I'm sure you are aware of. But really, since 2017, this subject of UFOs, now UAP, has had so many new people coming in. So like in the past, I always felt like there was a kind of the old timers club where we would just talk our insider baseball with each other. But that is not the case anymore. There's a lot of new people who have been coming into this subject. And I think your films are very important. I mean, they're great for experienced researchers. Don't get me wrong. They're wonderful for that. But they're really good for someone who's new, is wondering, like, was there a crash? Really? There really was a UFO, things like that. Very basic. And you lay things out very nicely. And I will just start by saying, I think this particular film, The Program, as most of your others, I mean, it covers government secrecy about UFOs or UAP. You have whistleblowers coming forward. I definitely want to talk about Jason Sands at some point. Doesn't have to be now. You mentioned Congress and their efforts to look into this subject, and definitely the role of private corporations in the handling of these types of materials. So with all of that, and there's others as well that come up in this film of yours, I just cannot recommend it enough. I think it's fantastic. But what I would say is, can I ask you, what do you hope that viewers, especially those who are new to the subject, might take away from watching this film, The Program?
I would say that to learn, if you walk away with nothing else, that there is an unprecedented push for transparency by a bipartisan group of lawmakers that's happened since primarily the revelation of a secret Pentagon UFO program on the front page of the New York Times back in December of 2017. And that they're taking it seriously, that the implications are beyond anything just within the United States, kind of global, right? And that we should be paying attention, and we should also continue supporting our representatives during this push, because they're really holding the intelligence folks' feet to the fire. They're writing legislation for whistleblower protection. It's unbelievable. I mean, I had a friend of mine who's been skeptical for decades, and rightfully so, fair enough. But he watched it. He goes, I wouldn't believe it if I wasn't coming out of the mouth of people that I know, like household names in Congress, in the Senate, in the House. Like, what?
You had a really nice sit down with Congressman Tim Burchett in this film.
Yes.
I mean, I think he's so important. He's always been very upfront in his public statements about the reality, or let's say the seeming reality of UFOs, and the obstruction that he's been getting from the federal government. What was it like talking with him? Can you recount some of the important things that he said, whether on camera or off camera to you?
Well, first of all, to talk about him as a person, on the second interview that we had set up a few months ago, I usually, when I get to the end of a rough cut, I'll go back to the drawing board and maybe do some additional pickup shoots, maybe an additional witness like Kirk McConnell had suddenly come forward. And I had arranged an interview about a memo that Chris Mellon had in Pennsylvania with him that I wanted to feature in the film. I figured while I was out there, I'd go to a stop in DC and do a couple quick pickup interviews. And I guess the schedule had changed, and I arrived, and I was notified by Burchett's assistant that he was going to be flying back to Tennessee, and that we'd have to reschedule another time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I drove all this extra way. And so I reached out, and as soon as he found that out, he stayed the night.
Wow.
Okay. And met with me at like 10 o'clock at night in the halls of Congress to give me that interview. I mean, who does that?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's great.
Stays.
You can see he's really dedicated. Some of these politicians, you can sense that they're just jumping on because it seems like a cool thing, a way to get their face out there on the camera. Burchett seems like he cares.
No question.
Yeah.
No questions. And yeah, no matter what your politics are, that guy is, you cannot not like Burchett. He's a sweetheart. He really is. And he cares, and he's going after it. And I appreciate that very much about him.
Well, he's been very upfront about his annoyance at the lack of genuine transparency. I mean, we have the Pentagon talking about transparency as their favorite word to use when talking about the subject, but I feel that he has been calling them out repeatedly, and he did so in your film.
Again, I'd say one other cool thing that I got to do with Burchett. I never thought I'd say I'd be able to check this off my bucket list, but I got to ride his skateboard down the halls of Congress.
Wow, nice.
How cool was that? He's like, well, be careful, because you want to fly off on this. And I was like, I grew up riding skateboards. I'm good. And so
what's amazing is that he had one. I didn't know that.
He had a big, beautiful board that he built. He hand built, which I thought was really fun.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, he believes that read between the lines, that he certainly believes that we do have definitive evidence that we're not alone, that the governments have definitive evidence that we're not alone. And he talks about how we're going to go about it, get it. And I just recently attended an event. It was after I got to go to the congressional hearings just recently, the ones in November. And everyone's like, oh, it's a big nothing burger. It's like, well, hey, you've got people testifying under oath that we have a crash retrieval program. You've got an admiral, Tim Gallaudet,
that's right,
testifying, again, under oath, a rear admiral, that there are these objects underwater that also defy a conventional explanation, exhibiting a technology that seems to be just mind-blowing. So, we've had 3 congressional hearings in the last 3 years, public congressional hearings. So we've made massive strides. So just, be patient.
Totally agree. Anyone who says that was a nothing burger was not paying attention.
Yeah, and Senator Rounds, gave a presentation at an event after the hearings, and he said, "Look, I understand your frustration. You feel like things aren't happening fast enough. We're not running a 100-yard dash here. We're running a marathon. So sit tight. This is coming."
Yeah, for sure. You interviewed some really fascinating scientists. Hal Puthoff and Gary Nolan come to mind. And both of them were really on point. You did such a nice job with both of them. Hal, who's I think about 85. I mean, he's seen it all. He has essentially done it all. And he's saying things to you like, yeah, you got your public scientists who are not into the classified world. They're going to say, well, there's no evidence. Show me the evidence. Which he said, I understand that. He said, the problem is when you bring them in to the classified world, now they cannot talk about it, and they're stuck in the position I'm in. And
isn't that incredible? And he's like, and that's just how it works.
Yeah, that's how it works. And Gary Nolan, essentially the same thing. Did you ask him, like, are you frustrated?
Yeah, well, I asked a lot of people that because I always want to be like, I don't know if you caught the Reddit thing that we did yesterday.
No.
Okay, so I cannot overstate the importance of going and checking that out. It was done. Multiple platforms all combined their efforts and resources and did this one Reddit thing. I provide details on my X account, which is at James C. Fox. But in any case, Kirk McConnell, Senate Armed Service Committee, staff member he was within government for 37 years, spent his whole life in the shadows, never really had any idea of going public. He's had meetings with senators and those individuals who have high-level government credentials, who have come forward behind the scenes and claimed firsthand witnesses, right? People that are directly involved with the program.
Yes, right.
And yesterday, I didn't think of this for some reason. I didn't think of this before when we did the interview together of asking him this. But yesterday, I suddenly thought, wait a minute, I really want to know what it was like to be in a room with a firsthand witness in a skiff and other senators during this intense, interaction. So I said, can you put us in that room? And he did it yesterday, and it was chilling. Like I have probably 5, 6, or 7 moments where I almost have to pinch myself during an interview where I'm just so like slack-jawed by what I'm hearing. And yesterday was one of those moments. And I posted a small clip of it on my X account, but you're going to sit in the room and you're going to hear and you're going to believe, what's been going on in DC. Like,
after this interview, send me the link. I'll put it retroactively in the notes below this interview.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. Yeah,
that sounds fascinating. I know Kirk as well. And a lot of people do not know who Kirk McConnell is. Of course, as you say, he's behind the scenes. He was on the staff of Senator Gillibrand and was very instrumental in writing a lot of the legislation that we're hearing about. And a very knowledgeable man. I was so glad that you had him on the show, on the program.
He got to sit in during a lot of those meetings.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
I'm not aware. So firsthand,
yes.
I'm desperate. I want to hear that myself.
It's so incredible. Oh my gosh. I mean, as someone who's been at this for 30 years, the only other time that I've had those gotcha moments or probably when I was in Brazil, and I went to great measures to get this individual to finally come forward, and that we were absolutely convinced, and I won't bore your audience with why, but extensive years-long research into who this individual was, and getting him to come forward. And I sat down during the interview. He's military X in Moment of Contact, and he's disguised and his voice is disguised. But I'm looking in this individual's eyes and I'm thinking, I'm absolutely convinced this guy drove an alien around. And I just the weight of that and the significance of that, and that I don't know. I can't, there's no words in the English language to describe just what it felt like to look into the eyes of someone that I was convinced that drove an alien around.
Well, you probably had something similar when you interviewed Jason Sands, and I would really like to ask you about him. For me personally, I'll bet for a lot of people,
Yes.
The segment that included Jason's story was the most riveting of all of the riveting parts of the program, because all of it, start to finish, was really superb, James. But Jason Sands, to me, just struck me as especially powerful. His story filled in a certain number of gaps that some of us, myself, had in thinking about Area 51, S4. But then there was just some vivid new stuff. I mean, this man stood face to face with an alien. That's certainly what it appears like. Allegedly. Well, I'd like to know what's your take on him, and what was it like to talk with him? What was your sense? And could you recount a bit of his story for listeners if they haven't heard it?
Yeah. So I knew that I was going to get criticism, just including even if he did it anonymously, I was going to get criticism for including that alleged encounter in the film, right? It took place, again, allegedly in the winter of 1994 at Nellis Test Range in Nevada. Yeah. And what we do know is that there was a UFO sighting and captured on sensors. On the
famous clip.
Yeah, which I had, and that was 3 days prior. Well, 3 days later, Mr. Sands and a number of other fellow officers that we have their name first and last, I have, were on duty going in to perform a particular exercise near a mountain called Quartz Mountain. And they, early in the morning, again, winter, don't have an exact month. I'm not entirely sure. I tried to look back at that, but I knew it. But in any case, they see what looks like an individual that maybe had a plane crash, in uniform, walking funny, looking like, needs medical assistance. And they had a whole convoy of trucks. There was the lead vehicle was Jason Sands and 3 others. And then there was 2 vehicles behind them. They're slowing down to help this individual out. And as they roll up on this individual, one of the people within the truck convoy, the front truck, screams, "He's got no effing ears," as they rolled up on him. Mr. Sands claims that he got out the passenger side and came up on this individual, tried to take his jacket off and provide some warmth. And when he made eye contact, he said it was almost like a snake bite feeling that he got. That, what am I looking at? Was it some sort of mutant or whatever? And then this individual had no ears, had really big eyes, and was speaking gibberish and wasn't really making much sense. And everyone was just sort of paralyzed in just complete frozen as to what's going on right here. And now I accidentally, right here in the studio behind me, I accidentally revealed a photograph on X about Mr. Sands' identity. I periodically post production stills and put them with updates and that sort of thing. And I did when there was a clipboard and somebody had written Sands on it. And that created a lot of controversy. And Mr. Sands at that point wasn't prepared to come forward publicly. He hadn't gone through the DOPSR process. I got a lot of heat for that, and I have nobody to blame but myself.
Because it just was an unauthorized kind of doxing of him, or
he thought he
was faking, or
I guess he's a so-called whistleblower. Behind the scenes, he was getting together, providing details on specific programs and some of those things that he was involved with during his military career, part of the legacy program. And so that was a whole kind of shit show. And I was like, I don't know. I wasn't sure what to do. And I was meeting with government officials that were part of the internal investigation into not just Mr. Sands, but a lot of other potential whistleblowers. This was going on behind the scenes. And so I was meeting with them, and, I don't know, do I leave him in? Do I take him out? How do I deal with this? And they were like, look, I know he probably has PTSD and there's some mental health issues, but he is who he says he is. He's checks out. He's all of his the programs that he's mentioned are highly classified programs that he knows the names of, and he served his country. And don't just throw him out. Like he's and that's what everybody was telling me.
Are there attacks on his credibility? I'm not aware of this.
Yeah. I got his military records. I got photographs of him in the military. I had to contact his ex-wife. She had to go up into the attic and dig through a bunch of boxes, which I got all those. I through some intel connections I have, we found the individual who debriefed Mr. Sands along with a couple of other apparently witnesses to the incident. And that individual would not even confirm or deny. It was like, kind of, we're aware of the incident and no comment at all, one way or the other.
Oh, yeah,
and that was it. So I really went on a limb because I can't. I'm claiming a face-to-face meeting at Nellis with an alien, basically, right?
Yeah, he had an illustrator sketch of it, which was really quite powerful. The individual looked kind of like a human face, no ears, bluish tint to the skin, which he described.
Yeah.
And larger than normal eyes. But otherwise, not like a gray alien, not like that, actually like a human.
Yeah. And I remember, there's been a couple of instances, I had people questioning, when I did Moment of Contact. I mean, I've got allegedly reporting on people witnessing live aliens walking through the town of Varginha, Brazil in, January 20th, 1996.
Mm-hmm.
I was certainly opening myself up to criticism with that. No question. And I kind of pushed the envelope a little bit each time around, but I do the best I can with these military folks. I do the best I can within my means, and I worked on it for 8 or 9 months. And I ultimately decided to include that in the film.
I'm very glad you did. You kind of needed to, because look, there are always folks in connected to this community who are going to shoot down every single new whistleblower or claim, particularly when it includes aliens. It's like we're okay talking about this vague UAP phenomenon. Sure, okay, we don't know what that is, but aliens, get the hell out of here. And that's a really bad idea. Because if this is anomalous, we're talking about an anomalous intelligence. If it's an anomalous intelligence, they probably don't look like us. So let's just be a little brave, which you were. You included it, and I'm personally glad you did. And his story did not sound radically dissimilar to that of Charles Hall, who talked about the tall whites. The description, because I've read Charles Hall's books, and that's another out there type of series of claims. But I don't know. I read Charles Hall and I think I believe this guy's telling the truth.
I remember I had a meeting with Robert Bigelow back in, I think it was 2009, 2010. And it was funny, actually, because I just finished, we did the National Press Club event in 2007 with Leslie Kane, and then I made a 2-hour special for the History Channel called I Know What I Saw, which you were going to be in. But then the audio interview that we did in the park,
I remember.
Whatever, sorry. And so, but you're in Out of the Blue versions 1 and 2. So
that was my first ever documentary interview.
But I met with Bigelow, and actually, his secretary sent me an email message. I still have it, and she said, "Mr. Bigelow wants Mr. Fox. Mr. Bigelow would like to congratulate you on a job well done." And I said, "Oh," and he was referring to I Know What I Saw. It's like, "Oh, that's really nice. Would you ever like to get together?" Blah blah. So, long story short, we had lunch. And we were talking, and he was talking about the politics of disclosure, the implications for, organized religion and financial institutions and all this stuff. And which really kind of, I don't know, I hadn't really thought of as much. And you wrote a book on it, but it was like, wow, okay, this guy's done some homework and put together, the intellectual heavyweights within the scientific community with NIDS and other efforts, and OSAP and ATIP. Well, ATIP at the time was still secret, as was probably OSAP. But in any case, he said to me, James, they're walking among us. And I said, and I'm not saying that I believe this or that I don't believe it. I don't know. But he said to me unequivocally, they're walking among us. And he didn't say, I don't want you ever to say that out publicly or anything like that, because had he done that, I probably wouldn't even reveal it. But he did say that to me. They are walking among us. They're here. And so I never really knew quite how to process that and whether I believed it or whether I didn't believe it. So I was inclined to report on some of these alleged encounters because, you know, I'm with the hope that other people that maybe could have been there. We have a rough date. We have a location. We have other names and witnesses. So maybe some more information will come out about that case. Maybe it'll come out like, you know what? The guy made it up and it's all a big hoax. I wouldn't have included it had I believed it was a hoax, but I can't be definitive on anything.
Yeah, no, you got to be careful. I get it. Well, I'm glad you included him. I'm one of those people who also believes they walk among us. It's a personal belief. I can't say that I can prove it, but there's just been way too many individuals personally who have told me very compelling stories. And then also in the research, I just think from my satisfaction, I do believe it.
Well, and I believe Socorro. I mean, I looked into Socorro extensively, right? I mean, I spent 5 years on and off investigating that case. That was a close encounter of the third kind. In fact, that was one of the most well-documented close encounters of the third kind in U.S. history, right? And then I started sort of looking into the alleged Holloman landing, and I became kind of convinced that happened and that we have film footage of it, which I know also sounds crazy. That was what, 64? Rua, Virginia. I mean,
No, it's just the amount of evidence for the reality of the phenomenon, if we can use that phrase. I think it's overwhelming, frankly. Relating to a big part of your film, The Program, which, by the way, you didn't really tell us where we can find it, but we'll do that at the end. But I'll have links for all of that in the notes below so people can find it. But a big part of this film wasn't just whistleblowers coming forward. I mean, that was a big part of it. It wasn't just the congressional efforts to investigate this, but you had a lot to say, or your witnesses had a lot to say about the role of private corporations in handling some of these UAP related materials. At least I think, if I'm recalling, I'm actually going off of memory here, but am I right in thinking that?
Well, we do it somewhat discreetly.
Yeah.
Like we show you a picture of those installations.
You listen to me about
No. Yes. You know what? I did.
Yeah.
To a sitting member of Congress, Andre Carson, who was the first
right.
it was spearheaded the first congressional hearings in over 50 years.
Yeah.
And I read him a quote because I figured much better coming from former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid than coming from me, public. And so got the interview. Hey, this assertion was made by former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, and I'm going to read it to you verbatim. And it's basically about that we have recovered materials, and rumor has it that they're within Lockheed. And so yes, I did cover that. Yeah. In the film.
Yeah. So, I mean, that type of thing really complicates the whole matter of government secrecy. This whole privatization of the secret. Like you, I've chatted with a number of that crowd for many, many years who've talked about the privatization of the UFO secret, the UAP secret. And so when we're talking about congressional efforts to obtain transparency, it always seems like they're running into this wall. They can go only so far with the federal government, but then you hit private contractors like Lockheed Martin and like many others. And you did point out in this film, as well as others, I'm sure, that a lot of the efforts to get information out of the federal government do not apply when we're working with the private contractors.
Yeah. So basically, how Pritchett explained it to me was that, look, you can have a government contract with somebody to paint the street, right?
Yeah.
I can't get the people painting the street in here, but I can get the people that contracted them to
Yeah.
paint the street, right? So if they made these deals, with, let's just say, Lockheed Martin or Raytheon, to look into analyze these materials, there's that 1 degree of separation that prevents us to subpoena a private corporation to come in and testify, right? So
Exactly.
I know they're writing legislation. I know some of the individuals that are involved with writing legislation on how they're going to go about doing it, because there was at one point something written in there called eminent domain. Is it yeah,
Eminent domain.
sorry, eminent domain.
Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
right.
And I guess that didn't go down too well. So they're going to try to,
No,
yeah,
that was a big NO spells no.
yeah.
Remember that? Yeah, the whole idea of eminent domain. People, I used to hear about it in, like, when they build a highway through your property. The state would say, well, we need your property. We're going to build this highway. Sorry, we have eminent domain. We're going to pay you. This is what your property's worth. Get the hell out of here. And that's eminent domain. So the government can literally, legally,
take over.
They can take over, a hostile takeover of your private property.
Yeah.
And so in the original UAP Disclosure Act, that, of course, eminent domain was written into that act, directed at the private corporations who are believed to have, well, alien technology and alien anything, and that got ripped right out of there in that first edition. And then, of course, the second version of that didn't even get into the National Defense Authorization Act anyway.
Yeah, the NDAA. For 2023 and then 2024, and then we'll see what kind of legislation happens, particularly with the new administration. I mean, I'm optimistic with Rubio and Ratcliffe. Those two individuals have certainly expressed a willingness for pushing for transparency. I remember Ratcliffe describing that he was national intelligence director, national intelligence.
Yeah.
During the previous administration. I'm not sure what his role is going to be for this next year, but that's certainly encouraging. He said that he had a plan. They had a plan to roll some of this more compelling evidence out before, Trump, the last administration. So
yeah.
So
first time when Trump first got in there, I thought, this guy might just be crazy enough to do it. I envisioned a 2 a.m. tweet, from Trump.
For real.
Come on, people. We all know it's real. And that did not happen.
No, it did not happen.
For round two, maybe we'll see. You had a couple of other very interesting, a lot of interesting witnesses.
I love the Calvine case. The Calvine 1990s.
Oh, God.
Because it's
that
like
photograph.
Right. Because when you look at the photograph, sometimes it's like, oh my God, it's too good to be true. Some people are like, it's a reflection in a lake. It's AI,
Oh my God.
But
I didn't even have that written down, but you are right. That was actually one of the other real high points of this film. So I'm glad you mentioned it. For those people who don't know, just do a search on the Calvine UFO. It's an amazing photograph. 1990, I believe it was.
Yeah, 1990, Calvine, Scotland, and it's spelled Calvine.
Yeah,
and it's a case that I brought to my attention in the late 90s, and I believe it was Nick Pope's book. He wrote about it called "Open Skies, Closed Minds."
Closed Minds. That was his first book.
Yeah, but I'd also talked to him about it in person, and I really hammered him in 2007 on it because he attended the National Press Club event I did with Leslie Kean. And we were having dinner and drinks together, and I was like, God, what was one of the best cases you ever got to, and right away he goes straight to that. And I don't think he told me it was in Calvine at the time, but he definitely said Scotland, and he said 2 hikers.
Yeah.
And they got 5 or 6.
Didn't he say, this wasn't in your film, I don't think, but I think Nick at some point said there was a big poster of that image on the wall where he worked.
Yes.
At the UFO desk.
I interviewed Royal Air Force retired Royal Air Force press officer Craig Lindsay. Thank you, David Clark, for making that happen. and he gave us the first and only on-camera interview where he described. He goes, "Yeah, I went up to the MOD and I saw that poster on the wall." He goes,
Yeah,
"It was
exactly.
there." And I said, "Well, what did the other prints?" Because there were, I'm sorry, I think there were 5 or there were 6. There were either 5 or 6 shots taken of that disc or diamond-shaped object
with a UK jet in the background.
With a UK jet in the background. And so I asked him, I was like, "Gosh, what are the?" Because I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but he kept one of the prints because the 2 witnesses, the photographer.
This was new, what you brought out, as far as I
Yes.
can tell. This is very
That
important.
information is like, I mean, there's been a print, but all put together in one nice package. It's never been reported on at this level. No question. Because we got Nick Pope. He talks about it. We've got David Clark.
Yeah.
And again, I can't give enough kudos to him for all of his hard work and dedication. He found the former Royal Air Force press officer, Craig Lindsay, because he had a redacted document that he got out of the MOD files. And it said, so-and-so RAF press officer, and he knew it was 1990, and it was blacked out. And he just went, "All right, who's the press officer in 1990? Boom, found him." They started communicating, and then he kept one of the prints because I guess he got a phone call from the local paper that was going to run a story on it right after it happened, because the witnesses had taken all these amazing photographs. We're going to go public.
Yeah.
And he gets a call from that Scotland Daily Record, I think it was. And they say, "Hey, Mr. Lindsay, what do you make of these this object that was taken?" He said, "I don't know what you're talking about." And they said, "Well, we'll send you a print, and you can we get your comment on it. Is it some kind of revolutionary prototype, whatever? Is it the military jet going around?" So he looks at it, he's like, "Jesus." Because you get a lot of
perfect flying saucer.
Absolutely perfect photograph, points of reference with a military jet going around. So he gets on assignment to investigate. He goes and meets with the witnesses that worked at the local hotel, and he's talking, and I guess it gets up the chain of command, and it ends up the MOD gets involved, and they told him to stand down. They got involved, and then after the MOD got involved, the witnesses and the prints gone for over 30-something years. And Craig Lindsay, thank you, Craig Lindsay. Oh my gosh. He kept that print that the local paper had made for him. And that's why we have it today.
Yeah, that's right. Can you please tell what appears to be very tragic story of those witnesses?
It's
I've not heard this. It's incredible.
It's unbelievable. I was sitting right here. And I was doing the final push. I was with Lance Mungia. I was with another couple of other.
Oh, I love your team, by the way. Lance, Tracy and I both adore Lance.
Oh,
and I saw you had Tim Coleman.
I had Tim Coleman back there.
On there,
together. Yeah. And I had Donnie, who's been wonderfully supportive over the years. Really,
you had a good team.
Yeah, and we're all sitting in there, and I'd been communicating via, I don't know, it was like Signal or WhatsApp, probably WhatsApp because it's international. I'd have been communicating with this individual, Richard Greaves, who allegedly worked in the restaurant as a chef with these 2 other chefs. Yeah. And he sat on the story. He decided to come forward. He came forward for a written only statement in conjunction with something that David Clark was doing. So I reached out to David Clark and I was like, "I got to talk to this guy. My film's coming to an end. I'm literally buttoning it up. I can try and squeeze it in the last possible minute." And so he makes the introduction. This individual, Richard Greaves, says, "Yes, I'll do an interview." But then he kept putting it off. And I didn't want to be super annoying guy that's constantly, to the point where he's going to just write me off altogether. But I was just persistent enough where, I kept him on the hook. And then he called me. It was late, and we've been doing a marathon edit session. We're trying to get the film out, and he says, "I've just come out the pub. I'm ready." And so we take what we can get. Lance, I think, grabbed his cell phone and just rolled camera. Got the audio from.
It was good. It came out well.
Yeah.
So tell his story, because it's a tragic story. So these 2 witnesses take this incredible photograph. One of them does.
take 5 or 6 incredible photographs.
Yeah, amazing.
On film, right? There were 2 hikers. They
Yeah.
might have been coaching as well, but they take film, like, film prints, right?
And they were co-workers of
35
this
millimeter
man.
prints. So I'm so sorry, I can't remember if it was 5 or 6, but it was at least 5. And evidently the pictures that they took have the object here, and that the military jet that flies around it is in different positions, because Craig Lindsay saw the other prints and he said, yeah, it's the jet going around it. And so they shot click, 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 5 shots with the jet going in different positions. And then the object eventually takes off straight up. No sound whatsoever. But in any case, he started talking about what had happened, and that I have the names of the 2 other witnesses. One of them is released in the film, Ewan, and I have the name of the other witness now because of this guy. And they were out having a cigarette break. I don't know how many, couple of days after the incident, and a black car rolls up, and it was pissing rain apparently, and it was dark. And this black car rolls up. The driver stays in the car. 2 men in suits jump out the back in the pissing rain, and they said, "Cigarette break's over, boys. We need to talk to your friends." The 2 witnesses. So the other were ordered to go inside the building, and they stood inside the building and they watched from a window as the 2 witnesses, their co-workers, sat outside with these 2 men in dark suits and a car idling with the window wipers still going. And out there for 10 or 15 minutes, and in the pissing rain. He said it's just pissing rain on them. Didn't care. And they came back inside. The car drove off. The 2 men got back in the car. Car drove off. They came back inside. They were white. What is a fucking ghost? Is exactly how he described it. They started drinking heavily, sleeping in their cars at work. Within a few weeks, they vanished without a trace. 34 years. We have no idea where they went.
This is 1990, and the UK government's using Gestapo tactics on UFO witnesses.
Well, no, these were Americans. He said they were Americans.
The photographer.
So because I asked him,
I didn't catch that.
Who was present when it happened? He said the guys that got out of the back of the car were Americans.
Oh, the Americans. Well,
sorry, because he said the Americans came in. We took a photograph of UFO. Now the Americans got involved, and he said, I don't know what they said to him, but that's what he said. Richard Greaves said that and I said, Richard, did you witness? Yes. He goes, I was standing right there when it happened. I watched them roll up. I watched them get out of the car. I heard them tell us, the cigarette break's over, boys. Go back inside. We need to talk to your friends. And then I go,
what's crazy about that?
All the whole thing. He says he would take a polygraph. He swears on his,
So I'm glad you clarified. Americans are coming out, and they're using the Gestapo tactics on these 2 witnesses. So 1990, this is like the Cold War is ending. And even then, like, there are people saying, well, maybe because the Cold War is ending, we can be more open about UFOs. This was something that was discussed among at least some people. And there was even talk that perhaps the Bush administration, Bush Sr., was going to do something along these lines. Of course, it didn't. And at the same time, they're going as hardcore as ever to intimidate and make certain witnesses apparently disappear.
I was highly reluctant to report on these so-called men in black or men in dark suits because, gosh, it's got so much baggage. It's like kind of the very word UFO, but it's got so much baggage. And I heard stories dating back to 1950 with Evelyn and Paul Trent when they took that picture in McMinnville, Oregon. All right, she's on camera talking about a guy that shows up from an unknown government agency, harassing her, rifling through her clothes, made a mess of her whole house. She talked about it. Rex Heflin, was it 65? Was that 65? Rex Heflin talks about the car that pulls up, and they took his pictures and they vanished, and they ended up in his envelope like 20, 30 years later.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It just goes on and on and on. And I heard about these guys when I was making Out of the Blue, and I was doing an investigation on the 1997 Phoenix Lights. I was talking to Emma Frances Barwood, who was one of the council people that was investigating publicly or called for an investigation, and there was an incident there involving her with these so-called men in black. And
I
again,
don't know did you ever know the late Jeff Ritzmann? Do you remember that? Do you know Jeff Ritzmann at all?
no, but
No.
but as I said, I decided I didn't want to report on it because I just thought it would be,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
men in black showing up. Come on, man.
No, it happens. It's real. Jeff, it's just a real
Totally
quick.
happens. Brazil was the tipping point for me. When I was in Brazil and that woman said these men in suits came up, I was like, okay, we're done. This is happening. Yeah.
No, it's a real
I'm going
thing.
to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, Jeff, he died way too young. He was very much involved in the UFO community and was one of the first moderators ever for AOL online, like in the late 90s. He had some kind of UFO thing. He was a moderator. Anyway, he told a story once on Facebook, and I clipped it, and I've kept it ever since. But it was amazing. And he just talked about getting a material sent to him from an alleged abduction type of a person. And it was in his office. He's working in this out of the way area in Maryland late at night alone. And these two guys come in, scared the hell out of him. And they let him know very clearly, not a good idea to hang on to this. And he somehow got rid of it. I'll have to review that story, but it was absolutely believable. It's just yet another. And he was wondering if he was being pranked, but he's thinking, I'm not being pranked. And how the hell did they know that I had this and all of that? So this is an old story.
I was contacted, and I can talk freely about this now because he is deceased. But the physicist at Stanford, who was Peter Sturrock, Dr. Peter Sturrock. So Dr. Peter Sturrock contacted me, I'm going to say roughly 12 years ago. I've got the email. And he said, hey, Mr. Fox, and he had participated in a couple of films, at least out of the blue. Maybe I Know What I Saw. I can't remember for sure. And he talked about the Condon Committee, and we had a nice friendship. We stayed in touch, Christmas cards. And he contacted me 10, 12, 13 years ago and wanted to get together for lunch. So I said, yeah, great. Do you mind if I bring my friend? He'd love to meet you. And it's like, no, just you. I was like, okay, that's a little odd. Sure. We met at a restaurant in Sausalito. It's on the north side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And we got together, and he said, James, I'm getting on in years, and I have some materials that are going to need some analyzing, and I'm trying to disperse them everywhere I can. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, wow, this is left field.
Yeah.
And so he said, I need you to make me a promise. And I said, okay, what's that? And again, I'm going to reveal this now because I'm no longer in possession of these said materials. So I'm going to violate what he asked me not to do. And that is, he said, don't ever talk about it publicly. Don't talk about it on the phone. Don't text about it. And I just thought, geez, this guy is so paranoid. And then he said, they have a very strange way of disappearing, and then he gave me an example, a recent example at the time, where he was contacted by his bank manager, and the bank manager said, this is totally inexplicable, Dr. Sturrock, but your bank vault door is open this morning and the contents are gone. And it was odd because he had so-called UFO material in that bank vault. He also had stuff that was being analyzed in a lab that also vanished. So he goes, this stuff has the way he phrased it, he goes, it's a very strange way of disappearing. I kept the stuff, it spooked everybody. I kept the stuff for maybe a year and a half, didn't talk about it at all with anybody.
What was the actual material?
Metals from like 5 or 6 different cases. Yeah. And so I gave them to the appropriate people to have stuff, because I was like, what am I going to do with this stuff? And it was freaking people out that were in my household. And so I decided I contacted some people that I trusted and off.
Good. Well, wonderful.
But anyway, my point is he talked about these incidences, and he literally said his bank manager, and I have him on camera saying that he gave me these materials. I never released it, but I had it just in case. But anyway, yeah.
I want to ask you about one other witness before we run out of time here. It's incredible. But I just want to point out to any new person, someone who's new to this field, and they think, oh, you're going into the conspiracy realm. The government can't keep these secrets. I think a lot of people do not appreciate just how sophisticated some elements, not all of the government, but some elements of, and particularly relating to this subject, happen to be. And I didn't know that story about Peter Sturrock, but thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Before we run out, I was very interested in one of your last witnesses that you had, the 82-year-old Fred Clausen,
Oh,
former fighter
yes.
pilot, who had a
Yes.
sighting, I think, in 1980.
Yes.
And he was a very, he was a wonderful witness. I don't know how you found him, first of all. Interesting. And what was it like talking to him? And can you tell his story if you don't mind?
Absolutely. Yeah, he's great. So after I had my second appearance on Joe Rogan about Moment of Contact, the alleged UFO crash that happened in 1996 in Varginha, Brazil, and I did a kind of a deep dive into that whole thing.
Yeah.
I had barraged with messages from all sorts of various potential leads on things, which I'm still following up today. But this individual in particular was really impressive. And it was anonymous email. And we went back and forth for a while, but he really stood out. I was like, this guy is really smart and he really knows what he's talking about. He was helping me try to find a particular flight that happened, because there was on the last visit in when I was in Varginha, Brazil, coincidentally, the I guess you call flight control officer admitted for the first time publicly that he saw the USAF, the United States Air Force plane, come in on January 20th, I believe the date was, and land in a place called Campinas, and then go from Campinas, have a couple of helicopters fly into Varginha, load some stuff on it, back to Campinas, and then back to the United States. And we had what we thought was a photograph of that plane sitting on the tarmac. Couldn't quite make out the tail numbers, and this individual was trying to help me figure that out. And he was really, really incredible. And I finally one day I was like, "Who are you? You're so knowledgeable?" He goes, "Actually, I'm a United States Air Force colonel, and I was also a fighter pilot, and also I was a witness to an incident that happened, at such and such a date." And so, wow, I said, "Would you ever be willing to come forward?" And he goes, "James, I don't know if I really want to go public. I'm happy to kind of continue helping in my way, but behind the scenes." And we became friends. And he sent an amazing gift package to my son of the fighter plane that he was, I want to say F-16, but don't quote me on that. That it was involved in the encounter, and it was this incredibly dramatic encounter. And he typed it all out in a letter. Colonel Clausen, United States Air Force, retired, and very detailed manner on and they got gun cam footage of it. And
yeah, he was flying. I'm trying to remember where he said he was flying. Was it over the Atlantic?
Yeah, I have that specifics. I can't remember exactly.
It was
But
in
in
1980.
1980, had an encounter with an object shaped kind of like a football.
Yeah,
and just no wings, no tail, no visible means of propulsion. He got his gun cameras on it, got clear, filmed it, and then it shot off, and it went up into space. He said it just went up into the stars, gone.
He stated that the gun camera film he shot was confiscated and it was never seen again.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yes,
yeah.
And
it was 24 years before the Tic Tac encounter, but that's essentially what he had.
Yep, Colonel Frederick Clausen. That's really cool that you noticed that. I've only had one other person go, "Whoa, that guy at the end of the movie just was talking about the anchor punch," because it was
absolutely
really a reminder. And I've had people tell me that, not on podcast, but on podcast, people have seen that was a really impressive witness, and he's a very impressive witness.
He was a great exclamation point to finish the film.
Yeah,
I thought because he's pointing out this isn't anything new, people. This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, so 1980 would have been 44 years ago.
Yeah.
So 44 years ago, he got gun camera footage of a football-shaped UFO that flew rings around his jet and took off and went straight up into outer space in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
And that footage, and he was told not to talk about it, and the footage was taken.
And as you and I know, and some other people watching know, he wasn't the first either. This goes back decades before him. But 1980s, long ago, enough. So that's
right, long enough ago. Thank you. Almost half a century. Crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing. Well, I really want people. I think people should see all of your films, but this latest one is really, really superb, James. It's great for it's great for this time. It's good for people who are just serious students to catch them up. It's very good for anyone interested in the contemporary politics of what is going on with the whole UAP Congressional initiative. It's really good with that. And it's fantastic for anyone new. Skeptics, watch the program. I think this is a really good starting point for them. So I just want to congratulate you on a job well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. And one of the things I'd like to say to the community is that it's only available right now for sale, and it's expensive. It's $20, and I get it. At the end of this month, we're going to be making it available via rental. There's all sorts of things that we're doing in terms of getting it offered on other various platforms like Vimeo and I think Google, Fandango, and internationally. But right now, undeniably found on Amazon and Apple TV. And if you can afford to purchase it now, and if not, wait, and you can watch it at the end of this month, and it'll be available via rental.
Yeah, well, help the man out and buy it, people. Tracy's right in front of me. She has a question from one of the.
It's from
Just say.
Strafe Wilson is in the chat.
Yes.
And he was one of the lead researchers on the Calvin
photograph.
Yes.
And he says,
ask James about the name on the back of the Calvin picture.
Oh yes, yes, I have that, but I was told that's not the name of the witness for some reason. I mean, could it be wrong information? Yes, I don't know. That was always so weird because it was like care of, and then it has the individual's name on the back. I can't remember. I don't have it right in front of me, but there's definitely a clear name written on the back of the photograph. And I'm told, but again, I'm not.
The name is supposed to be. Can I say the name or not?
Kevin Russell.
Kevin Russell is the name. Yeah.
But I was told
you don't know if it's the right name.
No, I was told the gentleman's name is James. It's Ewan and James. There we have it. First time I've said that.
All right.
Yeah.
Spill the beans.
But what, Nick Pope,
Well, good. Is there anything I read?
Okay. Question. David Grush has still not had a skiff time. Tim Bruce said he would make it happen 2 years ago. What's the holdup? Frustrating. Any news, James?
They won't allow him in the skiff with members of Congress. And I think it's one of the things that Brian Bender outlines beautifully in the film. And he says, one thing I've learned over my 20 years in Washington, D.C. is that if Congress finds it out, it's going to leak and you're going to find it out too. So the intel communities, DOD, has been doing everything they can to prevent Grush for going into a skiff. And that's what I'm told.
Yeah, it's amazing too, because so many people love to throw rotten tomatoes at Grush to this day. They're just all over him. Like, why can't he tell what he knows? Like, do you listen to what the man says? He has gone right up to that line, right up to the line. He's done everything that he can do.
I know. And and the threats are real. I mean, I've been, hearing about these.
All right. Tracy,
up to you.
We should end this here. It's a never-ending thing. I'm sorry to anyone who had the questions. I apologize, but I know your time is limited, James, and I'm very grateful for having you on here at this time.
I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's been great, and I'm always your films are always a great treat and an education for the rest of us. So we're really glad you're in this field doing what you do. It's very important work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I definitely work. I try to work pretty hard. I'm not going to lie.
No,
I remember.
It shows.
Yeah, I remember thinking if I work any harder, I'm going to die in my sleep. So.
Well, I feel real simpatico with you. We started in this field around the same time. We've been working the same turf for a long time, different sides of the country, but I'm glad our paths cross when they do. And this is really fun.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, wait, are you on the East Coast or are you on the West Coast?
East.
I'm on the East Coast. I've been on the East Coast now for almost 4 years.
We'll have to amend that situation.
No excuses.
All right, good. Well, I just want to thank everyone for being here, along with James and myself, for this really wonderful chat. And that's about all we got. So I'll be back soon. If you like this video, hey, hit like, subscribe, share. You know what to do. I'm going to have all of James's links below. If they're not in there now, they will be within a few minutes after this recording is done. And James Fox, thank you very much we'll talk again, I'm sure.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.